Hey folks, John Ferguson Smart here. I wanted to come back to a topic that a few people are asking me about. It's the topic of low code or no code. Does it really save you time? Should you invest in this? Should you pick up these vendor tools that allow you to write your test automation in plain English, really simply, and then dispose of the whole test automation thing? You don't need to learn test automation. You don't need to learn Java or JavaScript. Does it work? My take on it is that it's not really a sustainable approach. Now, the reason I say this is that low code or no code is not a new concept. I'll tell you a story. Back in the 90s, I did a thesis on natural language processing, and in one of my first jobs, I actually wrote a tool in C++ that enabled users to write SQL queries in natural language with autocomplete that would look at the database and figure out the structure of the database, and then use a dictionary to provide natural language. So they could pretty much type in natural language in their queries without having to know SQL. And that was pretty cool. It's a nice tool. But that did teach me quite a lot about this whole concept of low code and no code and what it can do and what its limits are. And there have been efforts to make it possible for non-technical folk to write automation or to perform technical tasks for a very long time. We've had Visual Basic and Delphi and Access. It's been around for a long time, and sometimes it works, sometimes it can have value, but does it work for test automation? The interesting thing with test automation is that when it comes down to it, what you are doing is you are modeling a domain, which is the behavior of your users. You are describing how your users behave, how your business logic behaves, what the business rules are, through examples and counterexamples of how that behaves, and through user journeys, where you take the user through the journey and through the application, and they perform different actions and they do different things. What you are doing there, this modeling process, this step-by-step action with different things that happen at different stages, that is programming, no matter what sort of language you use. Well, if you express those concepts in plain English, or you express them in Java or JavaScript or Python, you're still coding. You're still going through the thought process of structuring the instructions of what a user should do and how they should interact and what elements they should interact with. All that changes is the level of abstraction. And if I say, click on the submit button in English, or if I say actor attempts to open bracket, click dot on submit button called submit, it's pretty much the same thing. It's just the language and the syntax that changes. So the next question is it easier for you if you write it in plain English? And it's very appealing. You just say, okay, I can just write this in plain English, and that's awesome. But plain English, we've seen this like over decades and decades. It was like already saw this problem with the SQL interpreter, which it's a nice tool, but it shows some of the limitations. The limitations are that these queries, these instructions, they're plain English. You still need to know the language. You still need to know what you can do, where you can click and so forth. So you're going to need to have some sort of autocomplete or some sort of understanding of the syntax, of the structure. There is still a syntax, it's just not as obvious. And furthermore, worse still, what happens when you have these plain English scripts is that they become very hard to maintain. So are they in version control? Can you refactor them? If an element changes, will you be able to change it everywhere in all of your test scripts? If behavior changes, if the way you complete an application form, the way you enter a customer, if that changes, will that be reflected everywhere else? What if you want to do something that's not through the UI? If you want to interact via an API, making things a little bit more efficient, a little bit faster, how does that work? All of those aspects are very easy to cater with when you are coding, but not so easy when you're using these tools. So they do have a lot of big limits. So what I would suggest is that they may be useful in very specific, very narrow environments. But if you don't want to be locked into a particular vendor tool, if you want to be able to do automation that will work in any context, in any situation, to really expand your possibilities, expand your career, then you will want to learn to code. Tester, the skill of automation coding is not going anywhere. If you invest in yourself to learn those skills, that will take you far. You will still have an edge on all of these low-code, no-code tools. Even if you use those tools when you think it's appropriate, understanding how to code will be hugely valuable. So that's my take on the whole low-code, no-code thing. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care.